speaking, all right?
Everyone has to prove.
Okay, so hello everyone. Sorry for this confused start, but we really want to present a wonderful show for you today. And I'm so glad you're joining us to celebrate the inauguration of Claudia Sheinbaum as the new president of Mexico. I think it happened yesterday officially. Okay, so this is the country. Mexico is the country that our mainstream media frequently tells us is controlled by cartels, femicide, and fentanyl. And yet they've gone off and elected by nearly 60% of the vote a Jewish woman scientist whose family survived the Holocaust and immigrated to Mexico from Eastern Europe. So, who is this incredible, powerful woman from Mexico? So, the three of us, Gloria McMillan, Ellen Moss, and myself, as members of a new unofficial WILPF committee, have been looking into this and want to bring you the results of our research. Okay, it was actually Gloria who got us started. Gloria lives in Tucson, Arizona, just 70 miles from the border of Mexico. And in her town is nearly half Mexican or Mexican American. Okay, she will start us with a song and a description of this committee, the CCS Committee. Go ahead, Glo.
Oh, thank you. And I want to do my housekeeping, which we should have done right at the beginning. We need everybody who isn't speaking and part of the program now, please turn off your video. Stop video.
One world where all come together at last in peace. One world where the threat of all wars forever cease. One world where no harm comes to any living thing. One world where we know the true peace that love will bring. What kind of world will we pass to the children if we don't model all the best it can be? Each one of us is part of the one world family, in spite of differences between you and me. Will you reach out your hand and take my hand firmly? Together we can, together we will bring peace to our one world.
That's excellent. And that's from our Raging Granny from here in the Tucson branch, Alice Ritter. And we thank Alice. I believe she's here in our audience. And now I will hand it back over to Robin.
Okay, but I thought, Glo, that you were going to speak about what is CCS and what is this committee that is making this sort of seat of the pants talk about Mexico. Will you define what is CCS? Maybe she's gone. Okay, well then let's go on. Let me introduce Ellen Moss.
No, wait, I muted myself. CCS is the Communications Access, Cultures, the Arts, and Sensitization Committee. We have long needed a place where the arts and people who are activists but do arts will be, equally respected, validated, and they will have a space to develop their collaborative projects, such as this one. So I will turn it back over to Robin.
All right, great. And I'm introducing Ellen Moss. Ellen lives in the Boston area and is a life member of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Her avocations are poetry, art, and travel. And I must add journalism, because she has researched developments in Mexico under the last 6 years of presidency of Almo. We know who Almo is, right? Lopez Obrador.
I'm here.
She has traveled there and has a deep understanding of the movements that he is a part of. So she's going to introduce the next song, La Golondrina, the Sparrow. Would you explain why we're listening to that now? Why is it important?
When I was in Vermont this summer, where I spend time, I told my friend who has a farmhouse, a sustainable farmhouse with a big barn, has swallows there. And she showed me, and she told me this is going on for years, where the swallows go from her barn to Mexico and back. And that's happened for many years. So when I passed this along to my friend in West Glover, Vermont,
Things, and I
I
just,
am Lenny Villagomez Reeves, and I'm going to talk about art as a tool for social change. And I passed a little bit of my youth in Mexico, and I'm Chicano. Okay, so name the great Mexican muralists. Huh? Rivera, Orozco, Siqueiros, right? What name did you miss? The answer is Aurora Reyes. And you have probably not heard of her because she suffered from a critical defect for artists. She was not a man. Reyes was the first woman to receive an official mural commission from the Mexican government after the Mexican Revolution. And at that time, in 1936, she painted her best-known mural, Atentado a las Maestras Rurales, Attack on the Rural Teachers. And it represents the then recent massacre of 16 teachers in Guanajuato by right-wing partisans of retaining education exclusively under the power of the Catholic Church. Naturally, secular rural teachers were almost all women, and Aurora Reyes was a feminist as well as a communist and an artist.
excuse me a minute, Lenny, could you put up the slides, Ellen? Slides?
In most of Aurora Reyes' work, she shows women as central rather than peripheral, and as activists and fighters for justice and for revolution rather than victims. Aurora Reyes, remember the name, was born September 9th, 1908. She came from an upper-class family, but grew up very poor because her army officer father lost everything in the Mexican Revolution. And her reaction was to struggle for a better life for everyone, rather than trying to regain her family's privilege. She was a member of the Mexican Communist Party, a founding member of the League of Revolutionary Artists and Writers, and a member of the Enseñanza de la República Mexicana, defending the rights of women to participate in government and education. She fought for maternity leave, for breastfeeding breaks, for daycare, and for women's right to vote and to hold elective office, right? Many of her works have fallen into disrepair, even as Aurora Reyes has been relatively invisibilized in art history. And there is a second reason, besides gender, that Aurora Reyes has been ignored, and that is that until recently, as the Mexican government gradually shifted to an authoritarian right-wing regime in the period after 1940, she refused to be expedient and to compromise her ideals and values. Tomorrow, October 2nd, will be the 56th anniversary of the massacre of Tlatelolco. On October 2nd, 1968, in an escalation of ongoing repression by the government, of organizing by unions and workers, campesinos, campesinas, and students, the Díaz Ordaz government ordered troops to fire on unarmed civilians at a large peaceful march in the Plaza de las Tres Culturas in Mexico City. Between 300 and 400 people were killed. No one was ever held accountable, although investigations revealed the truth. The US government was supplying the weapons and the intel, along with instigating Mexican government violence, as usual. And this was a crucial turning point in contemporary Mexican history. Aurora Reyes was a firm and unintimidated supporter of the student worker movement against a right-wing oppressive government. Not everyone was so bold. Aurora Reyes' first major work was about attacks on rural teachers, right? On September 26, 2014, a group of almost 100 young student activists from Ayotzinapa Normal School, the teacher training school, headed to Mexico City in 5 buses to attend a protest precisely at the 46th anniversary of the massacre of Tlatelolco, which I've just mentioned. And these students were kidnapped and killed by agents of the Mexican government. In 2018, newly elected President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, organized a truth commission which produced indictments of those responsible and finally brought a measure of justice and accountability for those deaths. How Aurora Reyes would have loved to see the changes of the past 6 years with AMLO and the Morena party, the election of Claudia Sheinbaum, and the inauguration today. Mexico, even revolutionary Mexico, was a traditional misogynistic society. And since revolution is changing everything that needs to be changed, Mexico has now taken a huge step on the revolutionary path. Viva Claudia, viva Aurora Reyes, Únete Pueblo. I'll put some info and links into the chat, and we can't show you pictures except this one due to copyright issues. So do look up her work. You know, Aurora Reyes. Thanks.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much. That was lovely. And now we're going to start our conversation with me and Ellen. And let's go jump right into Ellen. What did you discover on your trip to Mexico that made you so interested in it? And when did you take that trip? Oops.
You're going to the third question, right, Robin? You're not,
I-
that's not the first one. You want to go to 3?
Well, the question I asked, let's have a conversation. I will ask you
Okay.
questions.
Okay, you use the questions because those are the ones I said. The Mexico trip was because of my interest in Mexico. And I wanted an affordable, wonderful trip, and I knew what was going on, and I went to Mexico, and the train Maya had a lot to do with it, riding on the train, because now AMLO has put in a bullet train that circles the Yucatan. And that is, of course, so people can have easy transportation to places that weren't there before for them, which is, the transportation was not there. The roads now are there. And I guess my excitement when I was there had a lot to do with my going to the Marina party and going to the rallies in Campeche. I went to Campeche and Merida and Cancun, and was able to participate a little bit in the excitement of making Mexico more of an egalitarian society. With, I think the other reason, of course, was listening to the press conferences every single morning that AMLO has done. I would say that I'm trying to go on to some of the issues that make it so exciting. The present situation, I think primarily it's because of the massive support that AMLO had over those 6 years in session, and some of the things that he's been doing. And I would, that was one of the questions, is making AMLO, why is he such a popular president? But my enjoyment of being in Mexico has a lot to do with the culture, the people, the warmness, the Spanish culture. I'm glad Lenny was here to talk a little about what it's like as she was a Chicano growing up there, and her understanding of a little of Mexican history with the artists, Aurora, and the student movement. And I followed that very closely, how Claudia and AMLO were both students together and suffered through the massacre and the terrible situation in 1968. But maybe if there's nothing more about my own personal experiences, I did go to the Rivera Museum, and it was pretty pathetic in that it was really hard to get to and very few people. And this is one of his giant murals. I can understand how fabulous it is to have a museum of what we just saw as a new fourth transformation item, as well as that's what we're calling the second story.
Yeah,
Those
well, let me ask you about that. AMLO's talks about the fourth transformation, and that implies 1, 2, and 3. And apparently, the first transformation he's referring to was in 1810 with the independence of Mexico. So he has a really deep sense of history and has called his 6 years the fourth transformation. And Claudia is going to build a second floor on the fourth transformation. I find that such an interesting way of suggesting her contribution. So could you explain how that's going to work out and what that amounts to?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that second floor again, because all it means is that you're building from the ground up the fourth transformation. So you build a second floor. Well, everybody's second floor is an extension and an improvement or something extra from the first floor. But she is doing this giant, it's a beltway all across Mexico, because you can't move traffic-wise in Mexico City. She's done a total transformation of the city when she was mayor of a certain area of Mexico City. So she was able to do the wastewater treatment to the point where Mexico doesn't have the pollution and the toxic waterways that it used to have with the sewage. She has this beltway, it's called the Perferico, and it's quite renowned. I think they have one of the biggest ecology parks in the world there. It's Chapultepec Park, and it has the tramways over it. But primarily, she's known for cutting the crime, cutting the pollution, because she was Secretary of the Environment. And she was also Mayor of Mexico, as I just said.
Yes.
That has a lot to do with some of the things she talked about in the art museum speech that you just heard. Her educational programs, I think she even considers just on a par with her climate work, with her environmental work. And that is she's giving scholarships to not only the primary school age kids, but the secondary school age kids. So everybody, for the first time ever in Mexico, has an opportunity to pursue their educational goals. It's been an amazing thing. I mean, these are just some of the few things for her second floor is these tremendous projects that she's embarked on.
So could
She's just picking it up now because they've done it together. She hasn't done it on her own, but when she was mayor of Mexico, she did a lot of her own
Yeah,
projects.
could you elaborate on what Almo has done to make him such a popular president? I mean, you've mentioned some things, but when I view the videos of him, he seems to be genuinely admired, adored, whatever, by the people. It's quite moving to see.
Yeah, it is. It really is, Robin. You know, to the point of 60% of the population, all 32 states, voting for her. He had a very hard time in the beginning. In 2006, he lost. And when
Mhm.
she went back to school and she got involved in the United Nations climate change.
Mhm.
You know, she is an engineer. She started out in physics. She's an engineer, and but you're asking me about AMLO, and AMLO, um, there's practically nothing that he hasn't done day and night, and you hear it. Unfortunately, we don't know enough we haven't heard enough about Mexico. So most of you have not seen those press conferences for 3 hours every single morning at the National Palace that he gives, and you can get them in English with the subtitles.
It's
But
sort of like Fidel Castro used to give incredible speeches like that. Um, but could you move on? Let me ask you about the femicide rate. Has that gone down since AMLO was in office? And also, what did Claudia do during her time as mayor to stop femicide?
the femicide in in um, in 2023 was like 833 femicides. This year it was 330
Mm.
for femicides. So it's a 7% difference. I don't know. The I do know this, that femicides are way down overall in Mexico, and that the amount of murders of women by guns in the United States is 28 times higher than it is in Mexico. So we call it femicide by what? By guns, by whatever. So we really have to get a perspective, but it's down to the point where um, it's a world leader in female representation. There's no question about it. With women comprising 50% of the Congress, 9 out of 31 state governors since 2018, they're women. And the central bank's president is a woman, and there's equal gender representation on the Supreme Court. So that's just a little taste. So the people now running the Morena party, which is AMLO's party, they're women, mostly women now, is the president and the secretary general of the party. Those are they're women running that party. I think that's kind of impressive. And I see them in everything, taking the lead, like you saw today before Claudia spoke, the Secretary of Education introduced the whole thing. And this is with the armed forces have been really, really built up under AMLO to the point where the security is for some reason is just gone out of sight with the National Guard development. And that is one of the reasons that AMLO has so strongly pushed for the judicial changes that have taken place that was so controversial in the US. The Post and the New York Times, they all said, no, you don't have the people vote, you appoint them. But that was one of the reasons that the Senate voted to do this, to have the people do the voting for the magistrates, the mayors, the governors, I mean, the ministers, the magistrates, and the
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been done before to elect judges. And it's interesting how the American press is very skeptical, if not critical, about that. And yet I mean, AMLO and Claudia are saying it, it's been corrupt in the past by appointing judges by sort of different groups that can be swayed one way or another. So I think this is a fascinating step forward, and it's not done in that many countries, as I understand, to
Well,
allow the
the judges were corrupt to the point, and I didn't get involved in the levels of corruption and who they were very open about who was doing what wrong, but the appointees, they were given impunity to the point where cartel people were being let off. So they were being protected by that. And AMLO wanted all of that corruption and ability to go after criminals. But the judges, the magistrates were holding that back. The other thing that the judicial overthrow did was to allow the indigenous people now to have full rights. They're covered under all the laws. Not only that, they're going to be, govern their own municipalities completely to the point where government projects coming in, the native indigenous, the Yaqui I'm thinking of in particular, they're the ones I know of, they're going to be able to run their own aqueducts. This gigantic project that's bringing them a lot of agricultural benefits will be run by them, but they're covered now. They have their own constitutional rights. The Constitution now is going to include them for the first time. So all of this, for the past 6 months, he's been constantly working at reform and getting support for the judicial changes, and the battles that went on that were visible to everybody were quite remarkable because you got to hear the speeches. But that,
Yeah. Let me just add along that line and the issues of violence and cartels and youth. I mean, it seems to me that AMLO has not been just like a crush them kind of mentality. He's trying to develop processes to employ young people, to set up camps or find jobs for young people so that they're not drawn into violence. Is that not one of his initiatives and hers also?
I'm so glad you mentioned it because the employment level has gone up enormously, as has the unemployment level gone down enormously. So I'm going to put that link in the chat so people can look that up. Every single thing imaginable about the society is been publicized well. And a lot of them have subtitles, so you can find out. Yes, you're right. It's the employment level of youth has gone high up, and they are in the employment a lot because of these projects. All of these projects are public, and Mexico is a very wealthy country now because of these from the bottom up. They're making their money. You know, there's some real criticism of how much, and even Claudia is quite critical of how much he's using the fossil fuel because they have a lot of petroleum and their ports now can export oil and gas, and but he has used the Pemex, the petroleum it was public, then it was privatized, now it's partially public, it's doing extremely well. So AMLO is a big fan of Pemex, and Claudia is alternative. You know, she was part of the IPCC, am I saying it right? IPCC of the United Nations. She was part of making that report that got the Nobel Peace Prize,
On the environment, yes.
Yeah, she was part of that. She's amazingly.
There's lots of problems in the environment there. I was reading, someone sent me a message about how our pig farms are in Mexico, and pig farms are notorious for pollution, and it's been very hard for the government to control them here. Though I hope that will be the step she will take. But listen, I would like to move on to immigration. We didn't get to talk about that when we listened to the song La Golandrina. Um, but the amazing fact that Mexicans make up the largest share of the U.S. labor force at 10%. 10% of the working people of the United States are Mexican, and it is and that these folks are here to send money back to home. And that's one of the reasons that AMLO, he speaks about this very candidly, that the money coming from Mexicans living in America is the largest source of income to his budget. So he wants to keep things friendly with between us and Mexico. And who knows if Trump wins and he wants to push everyone over the border, how will that be done? I mean, that could be that relationship could be in a terrible situation now. But yeah, so tell us more about how
The $5 billion this year, 24, that came from the remittances from the migrants in the United States was very, very helpful. I think if you're talking many, many, many billions over the years that they do, but that's not the largest, the trade between we are the largest trading partner of Mexico, and Mexico's the largest trading partner of us. So we're talking about much more than the migrant remittances that require him to play ball game over that awful border thing. But I do want to inform people, most people don't realize this. They tell us that the reason that migration has gone down now on the border, that there are fewer people trying to get in, is because of the severity, the stringent rules that they've put in. That Biden is saying, oh, we've made it very much more involved for people to just come in. It's because the reduction in numbers at the border has to do with improved conditions because of the progressive governments, whether it's Honduras or Guatemala, even Venezuela. They're not coming because they're staying home, and they're making a big effort to keep them there, especially, and they're staying in Mexico. It's not that we've been stricter, it's because things are getting better. That's my take, and I think I'm right on that.
Okay, well, that's positive, and let's hope that continues with Claudia. So could we talk a little bit more about the culture and the way in which AMLO often speaks about the pre-Hispanic culture and the indigenous people, and good heavens, those incredible pyramids that are all over Mexico that were made by the Mayan people or the Aztec people. And I just want to bring up a book that I read that really has clarified for me and made me very interested in Mexico. It's by Laurette Sejourné, called Burning Water, Thought and Religion in Ancient Mexico. And basically she argues that the Mayans and the Toltecs were a very peace-loving people, and they had rituals of symbolically giving their hearts to the god. But that was taken over by the more warlike Aztecs, who then actually put their enemies that they captured on the stone and cut their hearts out. I think many people have been seeing those images from Mexico, but it started with this this uh, uh, very peace-loving tribes of Mexico for in their early times. So anyway, AMLO has really encouraged uh, awareness of the early history and of the culture. And I want to just say I have gone to Mexico a few times. Here is one one of the videos I made called Journey Home Accompaniment in Guatemala. So I went to Chiapas and stayed there for a couple of weeks and then joined a Witness for Peace delegation walking with or traveling actually on the in buses to Mexico City. I mean to Guatemala City, excuse me, bringing Guatemalan refugees back to their homeland. And that was a wonderful experience, both to be in Chiapas and taking that trip to Guatemala City.
I'm so
And
glad you brought up the civilization situation, and you brought up your own experience. The ancient civilization is something that he feels AMLO felt through his whole career, and Claudia always backed him up on that. That the ancients are the ones that give the Mexican people their great pride and their ability to forge ahead with their several transformations and their wars of liberation and revolution, that that is what the Mayans in particular, and what he's done in every single area of Yucatan. He's rediscovered and opened up and actually what is the word? He's redeveloped the is restored the relics, you call them pyramids, the grand living areas and worship areas of the Mayans. And that is really, he wants to bring in tourism, but it's really heavily based on the cultural needs, what he feels of Mexico now. And he's done an incredible job on that. And that has a lot to do with Train Maya. Every place that it goes, there are the ancient ruins of the Mayans. And that's something people can really enjoy to look forward to.
I I guess we should go on maybe a few minutes more. I wanted to talk a bit more about Mexicans and Mexicans living here in Vermont. Apparently, there are some 900 dairy workers that come from out of state, and of those, some 80% are all from Mexico, many of them from Chiapas. And I interviewed a young man who works for Migrant Justice, who is, works with them they have a program called Milk with Dignity, and they've managed to get Ben and Jerry's to agree to certain restrictions of taking care of the migrants as they are living in these at these camps and on these farms, that often the conditions are terrible. But now with this Milk with Dignity idea, they are things are getting better. But the big campaign now for migrant justice in Vermont and elsewhere, I would think, is at Hannaford's. Hannaford's has not come around to being willing to agree to some of these restrictions of that providing health care, or that the farmers, of course, the farmers are very poor themselves, so it's a very difficult thing to push on. But the farmers need to provide certain cares. In Vermont, we established that these migrants who often do not they're not citizens here, they're illegal here technically, but to enable them to have a driver's license. And
Can I
that's been a,
speak for a minute? I think we're getting into the phase where shall I say, the attendees are getting restless.
oh,
They
okay,
they need to be able to share.
yes.
So if you
Please.
have some concluding remarks about whatever.
I would like to just conclude with the point about the inauguration, this historic thing that happened today. You said it happened yesterday. I thought it was today. But the Jewish scientist being elected in this primary Catholic country, which gets into culture and gets into the migrant situation, they voted for Claudia. Can you imagine what that means for us to just see that an entire cultural proclivity of Catholicism can change of who you want to rule you because of the benefits that come from the individual that is going to run the program, run the priorities of the country. And that's more important than the fact that they have this very deep religion and past, and that they're willing to vote for a woman, a Jew, and a scientist, which is not in their culture. So it tells you how important it is to get the right people and not worry about their personal choices there. One more, the other thing is violence. Everybody's hearing, if you watch any television, you'll hear the Sinaloa
Yeah,
cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and what is happening in Sinaloa. This is, it's the, I'm trying, I get excited, I can't remember anything. The name of the state that it's in, it's all about fentanyl. And the saying that the fentanyl is all coming from Mexico. Well, this is another area I completely think is totally off base and wrong. Fentanyl can be made very, very simply by somebody who has a couple of ingredients that are not scarce at all, and that can make it almost any place that has these few ingredients, and they do. It is not coming from Mexico so much. I mean, who knows how much the cartel, but
Okay,
so you
Ellen?
know.
Ellen,
So
our attendees are getting restless, so.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm finished. I wanted to catch that. The cartels are fighting it out in Sinaloa, and the National Guard is there. And so far, none of the people, the residents, have been killed. So if you have everybody telling you don't go to Mexico because it's violent, I'm telling you that you're very well protected there and not to be fearful of that. So my part is over, and I'm excited to hear what other people have to say.
or questions they might want to ask you. I'm not
Sure.
to see if a hand is raised. So maybe Glow, can you call on the people who want to speak now?
I was just writing a thank you to Ellen, so I won't do that. Thank you, Ellen. You did a wonderful job. You were extremely well informed, and I'm sure everybody feels that this was a very good one-stop condensed view of what's going on there. And both of you did a great job. So
Okay.
now
Thank
back to the party part, your party. Oh, I have to get my face back on here. Come on, Gloria, face. Oh, party, party. All right, so now, now what have you all brought to show? Cheryl was waving some wonderful thing around. Could we start with Cheryl, since I saw her waving and she really wants to share, but don't feel like you can't.
So this is what they call a Yama Stela. Okay, these are Mayan hieroglyphics. And when you're in Chichen Itza and you find the right tourist booth, they ask you what is your birth date, and they write it out in the Mayan hieroglyphics.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
fantastic.
It's
May I?
also,
Oh, go ahead.
pardon?
Oh, I forgot to introduce what you are and who you are. Cheryl is our wonderful head of the National Disarm Committee in WILPF.
Right. So this also tells me in their calendar what month it was. There's a civil calendar, a sacred calendar. The moon, when on the day I was born, the moon was at 22.837 days. So the Mayans were a long time ago, but they actually had quite a good scientific knowledge, especially about the moon and the stars. So I had this done 1990. I went to the Yucatan with my husband for our honeymoon. But every time every time I go to Mexico, and I've been 5 times, I've counted up in the last 50 years, I come home with some beautiful artifact, handmade, often by indigenous people.
Well, let's hear it from Mayan astronomy. I am impressed.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Okay.
Gorgeous.
And previously I
And
ate
it's
a
pretty,
piece of
too.
chocolate. Yeah, I ate so while we were there in April for the total eclipse of the sun, we bought this chocolate with chili in it. You can buy it. And so I was enjoying this at the beginning of this meeting. I have been keeping it for a special day. So
Aw,
It's a
thank you.
special kind of,
all right.
it's
So
a special hot chocolate with that.
we have
I-
unique things, and I know some of you have quite, oh, I wore my chili necklace. I don't know if you can all see that. I see Georgia's hand is up.
Well, I was just going to ask to make sure, Cheryl, is this a representation of your birth date then?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay, do you understand it yourself? Was
Well-
it explained to you?
No, I mean, I'm looking at on the back of this, they gave me a sheet of paper
Uh-huh.
and explained the different dates. There was the Mayan date. So, and then there's actually a different figure. They tell you there are so many blocks. It was like printed in blocks, and what each one means. But it usually hangs on the wall behind me. Those of you who've seen me in Zoom will see it's sitting just above me like this.
It's
Mhm.
gorgeous. It's
So that's-
absolutely
Yes,
gorgeous.
So it
Yes,
sits in my
yeah.
dining room all the time. And then we've bought beautiful weavings. Those lovely rug weavings, beautiful colors, and little pottery, and so, and a beautiful, like Ellen Mass has got on, beautiful embroidered blouses. I bought one of those like 45 years ago, and I don't fit in it anymore.
Okay. Yeah,
But
any other people with questions or
Do you have
comments?
any other offerings for us? You can have poetry or some experience that you had. Oh, go ahead, but I'll find what I have. I'll attempt to share it maybe.
Gloria, could you take off your necklace so we could see it better?
No,
Yeah. Just hold it up.
well, I'll have to double it, I guess, so you can see it, but you have to go in the opposite direction. Here,
There it is. It has the Day of the Dead thing in it too.
yeah.
are those skulls?
No, actually, they're little bells. Little bells or little circular things.
Wow, very pretty.
We have a lot of this stuff, let me tell you, in Tucson. You don't have to go far.
Right. Those of us who live, on this side of the country are more likely to visit Mexico, I suspect.
Baja California is Chicano and it's Mexican. They all voted just like the immigrants in New York and throughout the country. They voted for Claudia.
Mhm.
And the Baja Californians have a Senate seat in the parliament.
Anybody else have anything that you wish to show or share? I had a recipe, but it was just a joke, so I'll just skip on mine.
I have a fun fact for you.
That's great.
As Ellen just mentioned, people who retain Mexican citizenship, even if they're in the US, had a chance to vote in this election. And Fresno area was the area in the United States that voted with the highest percentage of any of the overseas communities for the Morena party and
Oh,
Claudia.
wonderful.
And my whole house is full of Mexican stuff because my family, my mom retained close ties with some people in Mexico. I decided they were like horrible bourgeois racists and stopped speaking to them at age 18. And I probably wouldn't change my mind if I met them today.
Are those birds we see on the shelves behind you, are those the Mexican birds?
Yes, they are. And I have art on the walls, but yeah, I think you'd get car sick if I tried to carry the well, let me just try one. Let me try two of them actually. All righty. Let's hold the computer up to
Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's
okay.
that's a print of a very famous picture, right?
It's a I mean, it's one of the things with numbers on it, you know. I owe all these to my mom. She was the one who was in touch with Mexican artists. Sorry about the reflection, nothing I can do about that. But yeah, and that does in fact show a rural teacher teaching people from the very aged to the very young. And then the soldiers are not attackers, they're revolutionaries who are guarding the
In the
rural
back.
teacher. And this might be interesting too. Elizabeth Catlett was a US Black woman artist who went to Mexico, partly because the art scene in Mexico was wonderful, and partly because the US was very repressive during that period to people who had left-wing political convictions. And this is called Mujer Indígena. And interestingly enough, actually, my mom thought of doing that too. She when I was about 3, at the worst part of the McCarthy period, she was planning to go back to Mexico, but she couldn't get a US passport. So we stayed. I don't know if that's good or bad. Haven't made up my mind yet. And this, of course, is also a well-known artist. And it's also a really, truly print. It's by an artist called Meshiak. And it shows indigenous children. I'm sorry about the spider webs. Some people should dust more. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna look to see whether those two women artists, Lenny, are in the new museum or not. The Aurora and that one, what was her name?
Elizabeth Catlett? I feel sure that they are.
I just put her in our chat.
Wow.
Georgia has something to show us.
Oh, it's too bad you can't see it more clearly, but or in the entire thing. This is, of course, the Nomalto yarn painting. And
Yeah.
I went to Mexico also. We took a long month tour to all of the major cities in Puebla, and this I bought in Mexico City. My husband didn't want to buy it, want to get it, but I thought
That is yarn, right?
I'm sorry.
That is yarn that is pressed onto a
Yes,
backboard.
yes, and we see a lot of those, but you know, I'm just really curious about if anyone really can talk about. I have my own ideas about what this symbolizes, but I feel there's a lot of really deep symbology here. If you want to talk about it at all.
There wasn't an explanation on the back given to you.
No.
Could I make a guess?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think it's a deer with the horns because the Yaquis have a deer dancer in their Easter ceremonies at Pasco Village. And I visited their Easter ceremonies very often. It looks to me like a deer with some horns.
Right.
Well, the deer is the messenger to the dark place.
Yeah.
Their world, and I'm not an expert. I feel embarrassed to
No,
even
I'm
talk
not
about this, and then you see, but the candle, with the
Yes.
around it, and then there's two celebratory type figures. Do you think it's male and female on either side?
They look the same, don't they?
Well, they're a bit different.
They're different. One's got a whitish thing hanging and one's got a orangey thing hanging.
I don't want to take up too much time, but it really, this is
Great.
And you can see the yarn. Of course, it's very, very detailed.
It's
Mhm.
very beautiful.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you for that. Are there any other thoughts or comments or?
Yeah,
Oh,
somebody.
I have, before you leave, maybe somebody else will want to share, but I just want to remind people to share the chat. There's been a lot of chat here. So, I mean, not share, save the chat. Yeah, let's get up into it. And on my machine, it's near the top. There are 3 buttons, and when you push on them, one is save chat, which
Mhm.
I'm gonna do.
So, the lady called Mary Anderson here was here a lot longer ago, but she had to leave. She was going to share an enchilada recipe with us.
Oh,
So does anybody else have a recipe from Mexico that they can briefly tell us about? Or their favorite Mexican dish?
I like nopalitos. Very few people beyond the border areas know what nopalitos are.
What are they, Gloria?
Nopal nopales are the tuna. They call them tuna cactus, the ones with the big flat, oval leaves. And these are strips. They look like pickles, almost like, or green beans. When you get them, they've gotten rid of all the spines, of course, or you'd have them in your tongue. But I really like them.
Mm-hmm.
Could I ask whether some of the people who are not showing their video, Madeline or Anita, or I think Tara is there. Tara from who I spent time
DC.
with on the summit in Washington. We would love to see you or hear from you or just get a
There's Deb.
response.
Deb has her hand up already, however.
All right. Who? All
Deb.
right. Oh,
She's from
Deb.
our Tucson. She's the head of our Tucson branch.
Yes, wonderful.
Hi.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a yarn painting, but I'm in the wrong room and I just love it. And I think on George's, there's a representation of peyote buttons from the Huichale ceremony. The little round things up next to the deer. I think those are representations of peyote. Also, I have so many memories when I spent three or 4 months traveling from the Catskill Mountains when we left the East Coast before we moved to Tucson. We traveled in a Volkswagen bus with our 6-year-old and our 2-year-old, and we drove through Mexico and into Guatemala. So I didn't have a camera, and we weren't able to buy very many souvenirs, but I have so many good memories. And also I have my copy of Frida Kahlo's diary. And I just love this book, and it has a translation in the back of it. And I'm going to read one of her poems, if I can find it.
In relation to the Guatemala driving, Georgia, from Mexico into Guatemala, one of AMLO's big projects was to extend the Tren Maya into Guatemala, and that process is underway. So Central America has a lot of potential to continue to move forward.
That's great. I just love that.
So while she's looking, I'll tell you that we did, our local museum had a big Frida Kahlo retrospective that I attended. Lots
Wonderful.
of paintings. Looks like she's still looking for it.
Yeah, we'll just continue.
I
while
didn't mark the play.
She's hoping.
Yeah,
to
keep
come up.
going.
Yeah, we'll just chat in the meantime. This has been very.
Carol, are you going back? Are you going to go back and visit again? It looks like you're a regular. You and Lenny.
Sorry,
Are you going back to visit again?
who are you addressing that to?
Cheryl, I think she said Cheryl.
Oh,
Cheryl, are you going back?
Oh, I'm sure we will. Yes. I've gone for various reasons to visit old friends who've moved. Many Americans have moved. to Mexico, but you can only stay so many months on your visitor's visa. Then you have to come back to the US for a while and then go back. Zihuatanejo, which I'm probably misspelling, very nice place to visit. Ziwa, everybody calls it, because even the Mexicans think the name is too long. And of course we went because we were on the way to the total eclipse of the sun in April. So, and I ignored all the warnings from the State Department about Mexico not being safe.
Okay,
Good.
well, here's Deb with her hand up again. Thank you. Deb, you have your hand up. Have you found it?
Yes, I found the poem. This is Frida Kahlo's diary, where she wrote, "I'll try out the pencils, sharpened to the point of infinity, which always sees ahead, green, good, warm light, magenta, Aztec, old, blood of prickly pear, the brightest and oldest color of mole, of leaves becoming earth, madness, fear, part of the sun and of the happiness, electricity and purity of love. Nothing is black, really, nothing."
Well, that's great.
That's really
That's so
beautiful.
true.
Yes.
Well, okay, so are there any final gestures
I
or
have
good wishes?
one more thing. When Gloria talked about the prickly pear and the nopalitos, every year I take the red fruit, the tunas, and make a prickly pear juice to freeze and to use mostly in lemonade. Just straight, it has a very distinctive taste by itself, and you're only supposed to drink maybe a tablespoon of it because it's a very laxative effect.
Mhm.
But if you put it, it makes your lemonade just a beautiful, beautiful pink color. And
And we
it's
also
quite a
drink
process of picking the fruit off with tongs and keeping yourself from getting stickers. But
Okay.
I found a way that you can, well, rather than burning off all the stickers, you can freeze it, and then as you thaw it out, the juice just comes out, and you can discard the rest. So it's a very effective way.
Well, thank you, Deb, and she's our head of our group, and hopefully if you come to Tucson, you'll meet our chair of our Tucson branch. That's Deb Livingston. Maybe she'll give you some of this juice. Okay, we have two more very short final comments now. Okay, I think Cheryl's first.
Yes, so another recipe. I have a very big yucca plant that's just outside my front door, and it gets white flowers on it sometimes of the year. And what I discovered is you can get the flowers down with a ladder, and you can make a yucca flower omelette. So you can
Wow.
actually eat the yucca flowers. You kind of fry them with some onions and then add them to an omelette.
Yeah,
So
very good.
that's it.
Okay, Ellen.
This book by
Mariano Azuela.
very famous writer back in 56, and he's writing about the Mexican Revolution. It's wonderful novel to bring yourself back into the kind of Pancho Villa, Emilio Zapata environment that's so common and popular, these romantic figures, and you can learn about them. And I'm sorry we missed talking about the Mexican Revolution, which was, part of the third transformation we didn't get to, but
Well, you're going to have your own extra, I hear you're going to be speaking, I think, at Diane's, Jane Addams branch. So maybe you can bring some of that up if that's your
I
next.
will. Well, this
Yeah.
is more to enjoy the novel, to get
That's
into
true.
it
Yeah.
in a literary adventure type of way, but also he brings out the sorrow, the difficulties as
Well,
well.
so we really touched on just a tiny taste of Mexican lit. There's all the 100 Years of Solitude and Gabriel Marquez, what's his name? Why am I
Marquez,
spacing?
yeah.
Yeah,
Marquez.
Marquez, and the whole magic realism. So there's so much to sample, and you can find a lot of references where to go online to read Mexican literature, even in English. So folks, this has been wonderful, but I think we need to wrap it up because my poor little machine won't be able to hold much more. And plus, I think we get timed out at 2 hours. So thank you very much for all your participation, and do join our Communications Access, Culture in the Arts, and Sensitization, CCS Committee. Yay! Okay, we're
So
glad to have you here and hope you'll see other things from our CCS.
Thank you. Thank you. A lovely idea to
Okay.
celebrate. And thank you for that link to the inauguration. I was looking on the BBC News, which I thought I couldn't find the inauguration, but somebody sent us a link in the chat.
Well,
Okay.
I hope Robin will tie us all up with making sure
Where
we
is
come.
Robin? Oh, I hid all the non-viewing people. Robin, where are you?
Robin was gonna tie us up, I think.
She's gone. I don't see Robin anymore. All right, well, I will do the tying up if Robin is no longer on, because we're almost up to the limit and we'll get cut off anyway. So thank you very much, and apologies to Robin. Apologies for all the glitches on the songs, but it was very hard, too much media. Okay, thank you
Can
very
I
much.
say, can I say one more thing? I'm sorry.
If it's fast,
Okay, Wilf had a chapter in Mexico, and so I was hoping maybe this would help revive and bring that back if we could track it down, and hopefully everybody will now feel that Mexico is part of their cultural world.
yep,
So
we're
that's
all
all I can say.
continuous. We don't have artificial divisions, so
Good,
next
good,
go back.
good.
Okay, well, we're gonna get cut off. I'm serious. So have a good one. It was so good of you all to come, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hi.
Bye.